so, so I guess we'll have a fair amount of continuity today in terms of what we've done in the past 3 sessions. So we started off with talking about basics of NLP in terms of pacing being a necessary part of any NLP process, regardless of whether it's a pattern or a model that you're trying to address, or a technique, or even an NLP based conversation. Pacing is a necessary part, so that goes without saying. So even as we talk of meta models today, if we are working with the meta model of a person, it is best that we pace. And pacing would simply mean be in sync with the physicality or the physiology of the person, which means try and breathe at the same rate, try and assume the body language of the person as much as possible, mirror the voice, and all of that. So match the physiology as much as possible in order to get into unconscious rapport. But of course, be conscious of the process so that you're not dragged down by the other person's physiology, but you in fact wish to lead the person onto a better state. So pacing needs to be a very conscious process. Unconscious pacing happens all the time, but we need to be conscious in terms of NLP based pacing. And the purpose overall of NLP for Richard Bandler and John Grinder, who founded it, and also for me personally, has been really about modeling excellence. And excellence could be about simply even a momentary state of being. So if I see somebody, let's say, dealing with a particular situation in a nice way where the rest of the people are getting angry about it or irritated with it, for me that is a moment of excellence which can be modeled. And modeling is purely about being able to embody that state for a moment in time, and in that process creating the neural pathways in our brains so as to be able to use it as a skill in the future. So that's how my perception of modeling has been. So the second part of the series, we spoke about rep systems, representational systems, which is primarily all our sense organs and how we can use the clues given by a representational system in order to be able to deal with a person better, interact with a person better. And the last time we spoke about one of the many patterns that are used in NLP. We spoke about the swish pattern, which is primarily used to either shift habits, shift sometimes beliefs, sometimes shift associations with unpleasant memories. You could use it for multiple purposes. It's a very simple pattern, and if it's done well, if it's done in rapport with oneself, one time and it's done. You don't need to keep repeating the pattern. Right? And that goes for any pattern with NLP. The premise is that if you're able to do it well, and if you're able to anchor the new belief or state of mind one time, it stays. You don't have to keep repeating it every day. So it's not so much a matter of having to practice it rigorously. So that was what we spoke about. So today we're going a little back into the basics. We are going to be talking about the meta model. Meta model was the very first model that Richard Bandler and John Grinder proposed when they were studying NLP at that point in time. This was in the 70s, and this was the first thing that they came up as they studied people who they termed as geniuses in their respective field. It could be doctors or engineers or artists or singers, anybody who they termed as geniuses, and they were attempting to figure what happens in these guys' minds that makes them a genius. So the first model they looked at was this one, the meta model. The premise or the basis of the meta model is that one simple statement: the map is not the territory, right? Or the map is not the world. We may have heard that statement often in the context of NLP. What we're talking about here is, if we have to draw that analogy further, when we look at a map in an atlas, for example, we look at the map of India. And we have various kinds of maps. Sometimes you have those geographical maps showing terrains, you have those state-wise boundaries maps, you have various other kinds of maps. However, no matter how real the map gets, even if you make a huge map as big as the territory, the map is still not the territory. It is still just a map. So even if I'm looking at an India-sized map of India, that is still not India, it's still a map. Right? So because there is so much more in the reality that is India that cannot be contained in the map. Right? So it's just a picture in a way, it's just a representation of the territory, but it's not the territory itself. The way that is used in terms of NLP is that each of us have our maps of the world, right? So I have relationship maps, I have a map of my profession, I have a map of my home, I have a map of the city I live in, and the maps in my mind are really formed by the language that I use. So if I say that, okay, my home is a very nice, cozy, comfortable place, I like it because it's got these nice yellow colored walls, and there are plants, and there are flowers, and there's a swimming pool, and all of that. Now, all that is things that I'm telling myself, right? And just because I'm saying that to myself does not make the home good or bad. It is just what it is. So somebody else may walk into the same house, same features, same atmosphere, all of that, and say, no, it's a very uncomfortable place. But that's their map of the same territory, and my map is very different. Right? So NLP, through all the processes that it does, processes and patterns that it does, reinforces the fact that because the map is not the territory, and in our heads we live in a world of maps formed by our language, it is possible that we can shift our perception of the territory by changing the map. The territory outside does not have to change. That is the premise, in the sense we don't have to go out and change the world. So if I do not like my house, I don't have to go out and refurbish the house every time I do not like it. I can change my map instead, because the territory is what it is, the world is what it is, the map is inside of me. Right? And the map is primarily formed by the language that we use within ourselves. Right? So it's mainly the internal language, internal dialoguing that happens through reassertion of our beliefs, whether it's good beliefs or limiting beliefs, either way. It is through anything that we have strong opinions about. All of that forms the map. Our judgments also form our map. Our good opinions also form our map, either way. So maps can be functional or dysfunctional, as the case may be. Right? So as I said, the meta model was the first model published, first NLP model published by Bandler and Rinder, 1975. There have been additions to it, but all of them revolve around the premise that the map is not the world, and therefore it's possible to change the map for you to have a different perception of the world. Right? And the maps are formed by language patterns. Now, when we say language pattern here, we're not really referring to any particular language, but the belief system and the opinions and the judgments, whether positive or negative, that we carry. Right? So we can use meta model in any language whatsoever. It doesn't have to be English or anything specific. Okay. So we'll dive right into the meta model, which is the crux of our discussion today. So there are several meta model variations and violations thereof. So and meta models occur, or rather are displayed through various ways of using language. Okay. So for example, one of the common violations that occurs, and they're called violations in the sense that they become dysfunctional. So there is a certain belief or opinion or judgment that I carry about anything, a particular situation or a conversation maybe, that is not serving me. When we say dysfunctional, it is basically that this particular map makes me very uncomfortable with the territory. It makes me uncomfortable with the world. So let's say I keep saying I don't like the house that I'm staying in, it's my map that's saying something about the territory that is my house, right? And if I say I'm not comfortable with the house, then I obviously have some reasons in my mind about color of the walls is not right, or it's too far from somewhere, or there's too much traffic around, or anything that may be my belief about the house, which makes me label the house uncomfortable. It's making me label my world uncomfortable. Now, instead of having to go change the world, I can change the map, because that's easier to work on and of course more powerful to work on, in the sense I can't keep going around changing the world. So there are various ways in which these maps get expressed, and those expressions are contained in the meta model. So I'm going to talk only about these four models, four variations of meta models today. There are about 22 of them that are documented. They revolve primarily around the same kind of notions. So the first one is what is termed as mind reading. Mind reading is where a model expresses itself in the form of a guess about somebody else. It could be internal, it could be external. So for example, the external expression here that's given is, I'm sorry I'm boring you with my story. Right? Often with conversations with friends or with people, we say, I'm sorry, I know I'm dragging my problems, I'm sharing my problems with you, I know you're getting bored. Right? That's one expression of a meta model. So what's in my map is, my story is boring. Right? And I'm projecting that onto you in the conversation and saying that you're getting bored because I'm sharing my problems or my story. So there's a meta model expressing itself, a belief expressing itself that I am boring. Right? And what we can, so the negative examples are an expression of the model which is in there, and the positive challenge is where if you as practitioners of NLP wish to shift that model for the other person that you're speaking with, you may offer a positive challenge which will in a way rattle the model for that person. So if I'm telling you that I know I'm boring you with my problems and my stories, a shift or a challenge that could cause a shift in me, in my map is, so you think you'll bore me? Or what do you think, what part of the story do you think is boring for me?
Or we can ask how.
Yeah, how do you think you're boring me? Yes. Anything that addresses the, yes. See, typically the unconscious response in this kind of a conversation is, no, you're my friend, I'm here to listen to you, it's all right, go on. But somewhere the subtle message that also goes to the person is, yeah, go on boring me. Because that's the model that exists, right?
Indirect meaning is, okay, you bore me.
Yeah, it's like I'm doing you a favor, you can keep boring me, I'll keep listening, right?
Sometimes
Yeah.
happens means whenever some person especially, they means whenever they come, they start same story.
Yeah.
The other person
Yes.
might get bored or means
Yeah, I mean,
nothing
depends
else
if the other person believes that he's boring.
nothing else to say.
Yeah.
Might be
Or
the,
even if we complete, suppose somebody is saying something and we interrupt and we complete the sentence, that is also comes under.
You might, and if you do interrupt, you might end up.
Other person.
Yes, you are mind reading. Yes.
Means we assume that he wants to say.
Yes. And but it's not always dysfunctional, but what you need to check is how have you completed it? Have you served the person's model well?
Or a major part will go for I'm not listening properly.
Yes. So it depends on whether you serve the model well in a functional way, or are you deepening the dysfunction. Yes. Positive challenge is where you perceive. So for example, I'm sharing a problem with you and somewhere along the sharing I'm saying, I'm sorry, I know you're getting bored with my problems. Right? Now the model that's coming across in this conversation is that somewhere I'm boring. Right? I don't consider my life worth sharing. Right? Now that's a model I'm living with, that's a map I'm living with, and that map is not a very functional map. It's not helping my self-image, it's not helping my self-respect. And if I keep deepening that map, it helps me, it makes me disconnect with the world. Right? The more dysfunctional a map gets, the farther away it is from reality, and therefore I will not be functioning very well if I keep living with that map. So therefore, if there is an opportunity, you do detect a model which is dysfunctional, you might want to offer a positive challenge which says, okay, so you think you're boring me, how do you think you're boring me? Somehow that articulates the model for that person. The person suddenly realizes that, oh, I realize I'm saying that I'm boring. And therefore, in that process, in saying how or why, you offer me an opportunity to shift or relook at my model, relook at my map. Yes.
Or sometimes we can, instead of what the person expects,
Yeah.
we can totally surprise the
Yes.
person by asking something else.
Yeah, the positive challenges is a surprise for the person, because the person is functioning out of the model, functioning out of the map. And somewhere you're rattling the map by saying, how are you boring?
The person has to say that.
Yeah, because the person is suddenly forced to look at the belief and say, oh, this is what I'm believing. Of course, I may choose to still stay in that belief after that, but at least you've offered that opportunity to shift. I may take it up as an opportunity and say, oh, okay, probably I'm not all that boring, but maybe some particular incident has dragged me down, I need to come back up. So it offers the person an opportunity by challenging the belief, challenging the opinion that seems to be deep. Okay? So that's one way of, now when there is an external expression, it's of course much easier to help the person shift by asking those questions. If it's an internal expression, then yes, you will have to see how else you can help the person. And internal expressions are where you can help yourself also. Very often we have those internal dialogues which are not very self-serving, right? For example, there's an internal dialogue that's mentioned there, a monologue that's mentioned there, which says, they must be thinking what a fool I am. Right? So, I know my father thinks I'm useless. Right? I know my boss thinks I'm good for nothing. That's an internal mind reading. I'm guessing what the other person is thinking. The other person has not told me anything, but I'm guessing what the other person is thinking. So in that sense, I'm mind reading, but it's not really serving me, because somewhere I'm dragging down my image. I'm losing confidence. I'm losing self-esteem in that process. So if you happen to catch yourself in expressing something like that, a mind read which is like that, a shift could be to perhaps try and tell yourself, I wonder what my boss thinks about me. I wonder what my father expects of me. Okay? So somewhere in shifting that judgment to a question, I'm able to leave opportunities open. So I'm not stuck with that thing that I am branded useless, I am fool. I'm instead shifting that to a question and saying, I don't know what I am, but it's okay. I'm open to receiving.
Sometimes, because sometimes speaking, some people use that word, please believe me. That means it is an indirect expression of that.
That you don't believe me. Yes.
And losing your confidence.
Yeah. I'm really telling you.
Really telling you.
Right? I'm really telling you. It's an act of desperation where somewhere my belief says,
Yes.
I don't know.
It is expression as such. It is expression as such.
Is it?
Expression.
It could be a habit. It could be a habitual expression, but at the same time, why would that person incorporate that habit and not something else? There's some resonance that has happened at some point in time.
And that carries.
Yeah, and that becomes a habit, and in that process, the person stays with that belief also, which means in every conversation, if I'm saying that I'm really telling you this is what it is, then it's very likely that my belief is, unless I assert and reaffirm myself, people are not going to listen to me. So if you're able to, in that conversation, challenge my model and say, why do you think I'm not believing?
Facts and figures are there, so you have to believe.
Yeah. Of course, you've given me the facts. Definitely I believe you. If you're able to shift that for me, in that moment there is an opportunity then for me to shift my map. Then the territory becomes better for me. And it's all we've done is a simple shift of language. That it's not huge, but it is huge in an internal sense of the term. Okay? So that's one very common metamodal expression, mind reading, which very often happens. We'll find people expressing it, and yeah, all of us do that, and we often hear other people do that. So the invitation here is, by knowing metamodals, listen for them in yourself, in others, so that in a conversation you're able to constantly help others shift their models if need be. Sometimes, of course, you will also hear good models that are expressed, like, I'm always helped by my family. Right? So that model seems to be serving me. It's giving me a sense of support. It is giving me a sense of being held by my family space. So that model is serving me. It doesn't need to be shifted, unless for whatever reason you perceive that that's really not the reality. Right? So let's say I'm in an abusive marriage and I'm telling someone, no, my husband is the most gentle person ever, and you know that somewhere I'm covering up, then that is not helping. So that model may also need to be revisited. That model may also need some shaking up, because sometimes I may use a positive model just to shield myself from discomfort. So I may want
internal discomfort is there.
Yeah. But I don't want to acknowledge the husband as a perpetrator, so I'd rather say he's the good man, I'm always at fault.
Others should know.
Yeah. Others should know, and sometimes I don't want to acknowledge it to myself, because the moment I acknowledge, I'll need to do something about it. Right? So sometimes, yes, positive models may also need to be shifted. So you'll need to listen for where the person is coming from. So that's mind reading. The second one is modal operators. Modal, if you remember modal auxiliaries that we studied sometime in school, English grammar. Modal auxiliaries are what are called helping verbs, which express things like order, permission, words like should, have to, must, ought to, anything that expresses some things like a command or an order or an expectation. Those are modal auxiliaries. So the modal operators will give you, and each language has various kinds of modal auxiliaries. Okay. So for modal operators often express what the belief inside is. So for example, you have to always follow the rules. Okay. You have to be polite to elders. Those are beliefs expressing themselves through modal operators. So the have to part expresses a sense of compulsion. I don't have a choice in the matter. I have to be respectful to elders just because somebody somewhere told me.
Like, mother many a time gives this.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of these metamodels are nicely fed into us. Yeah. So some of them may serve us, but
You should not talk to strangers.
yes.
Or certain belief we follow blindly.
Yeah.
It has happened because it is said.
Mm.
So we don't challenge that.
Yeah. But sometimes in not challenging it, we are disconnected from our territory. Right? So as a child, mother told me never talk to strangers. Okay, that was as a child. Now if as an adult I'm in a profession where I need to talk to strangers, somewhere that model will hold me back, because unconsciously every time I am talking to a stranger, something in my brain will flag and say, hey, keep a distance, and then it doesn't serve me. So again, those modal operators, the have to, should, must, cannot, ought to, those models again sometimes do need to be challenged. So if someone says you have to follow the rules, it might be good to pose a question and say, what happens if I do not? Again, the positive challenge, remember, needs to be carefully worded in that it is meant to challenge the person's belief, not the person. Okay? So it's not about saying, what will you do if I don't?
Correct.
It's not about what will he do. It's just about what happens if I don't. Remember not to challenge the person, we are only challenging the model, we are only challenging the belief there. Right? So modal operators are a huge clue for meta models expressing themselves. The third and a very common one is cause and effect. Cause and effect is where I'm trying to link my action to something else that has happened recently or way back in the past, and because I'm holding on to that as a reason, somewhere my life might stop or be stagnant or
Is
be
it the same like generalization? Part of that?
sometimes it could be a generalization
Something
also.
happened, so I generalize.
Yes, yeah, it's possible that I may generalize in the process.
Staying in past. Because
Yeah, because it gets, those kind of statements anchor me to the past. Right? So the example that we have here is, I am not responsible for my actions because my parents were abusive. My parents were not educated, so I did not do well in life. Right? So somewhere there is a cause and effect which I have anchored in my mind. It's anchoring me nicely into the past. It's giving me the comfort of not being responsible at this moment. However, it's not serving me either. So when we come across that sort of a cause and effect model, again, it would be good to challenge it with something that...
Sometimes this gives us bad payoff also.
Yeah, there is always a payoff. Yeah. Because the payoff is usually that I can always blame somebody else. I don't have to be responsible for my life. It's comfortable.
when we blame others, so we are giving power to them or the event.
Yes, yeah.
And that becomes difficult later on for us to bring that change or what change.
Yes, but in giving away my power, I'm also very comfortable because I don't have to exercise my power. So it's a state of not doing anything, and that is a payoff. In the sense, anything that happens in my life is because of him, not because of what I did.
Regress, but I am comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, even people, actually something bad happens. Normally they blame others, and good happens. Our nature is such that we take credit.
We want to take credit, yeah. So cause and effect is, where you're anchored in a particular trigger, which is a cause. It could be as simple as a black cat causing the road, right? I mean, some cause which leads to some specific effect. So it could be a superstition expressing itself. It could be an unpleasant event or a person in the past which is expressing itself. Anywhere where the mind has gotten anchored and says, now everything that happens in my life is because this one particular incident has happened. Right? So that anchors as a belief. Now, again, you can shift that through a positive challenge, saying that if I'm saying that I'm not responsible because my parents were bad, you could offer an alternative to say that children of abusive parents behave in different ways. Again, remember, we're not attacking the person, and therefore it's not about saying, no, you have a choice, why aren't you doing anything?
One more thing, counting the blessings. Or being.
That could be a positive model.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, that could be.
Our blessings, or things we are grateful.
Yeah.
That can realize. Sometimes we don't.
See, usually with a positive challenge, we avoid offering a solution. Right? So if I'm saying that, my parents were really bad, I had a terrible childhood, that's why this is what my life is. If you're offering me a solution in the form of saying, why don't you count your blessings instead, my mind perceives it as a counter. Right? Because somewhere I want to stay grounded in this thing that my parents were terrible, aren't you hearing it? Right? So it goes into a defense. Right?
Yeah, about that part, chances are that that point the person will resist. Other things, if we ask him what you are grateful for,
Yeah.
about the day or the
Yes, but see, when you move into a solution mode, the trouble is somewhere my mind feels unheard. Right? I'm telling you my parents were terrible, why aren't you focusing on that? Why don't you say, yes, my parents were more terrible, it was really bad, why aren't you sympathizing with me? So the mind goes into that loop. Right?
Yeah, one more thing, humor is there. We can say all parents are that way with something.
See, if I really believe it, that will deepen my belief. right? I'm saying my parents are terrible and you're saying all parents are terrible. I'm like, yeah, of course all parents are terrible, right? No, I may not take it as humor. I may want to hold on to that. So when we offer a positive challenge, it has a very crucial role. It's not just about a random simple statement, but it's about really offering an alternative to that person without threatening, without saying I'm here to shift your belief. Right? All of NLP is really subtle languaging. So we're not telling the person, okay, I'm going to talk to you and shift your belief. This happens by way of regular conversation. So it's simply about offering an alternative. Children of abusive parents behave in different ways. Do you see any other ways that we can handle this?
Yeah, or the person will shift us.
Yeah, if you're in a rapport, it's very possible that the person will shift you. Very possible, yes. So while the positive challenge sounds very simple, it's important to word it in a way that you're addressing only the model, not addressing the person. That's a crucial part of the skill.
But the choice of the words also depends on the mood also.
The point of pacing is to empathize with that person's mood, but in the same vein, be very conscious of what's the territory that you want the person to acknowledge. So yes, you can't flow with that person's anger or that person's sadness or that irritation. You're there, you're acknowledging it, but at the same time, your intention that you're holding in the conversation is, let me connect the person back to reality, back to the world, right? So the person's map is stuck somewhere and that's really not the world as you see it. So the offering is to say, let me connect the person better back to the world. Whether he chooses to take that connect or not is still a choice, but if you're usually in unconscious rapport and you're very conscious of the work that you're doing, then normally the shift happens without the person realizing it.
At least he will pause and he will think.
Yeah. In that moment, the person may not even respond, and that's a very important principle with NLP work. Don't force a response. It's okay if the person just goes blank at that point or shifts the conversation because somewhere the mind feels a little surprised and uncomfortable. That's okay. Let the person be in that state. At some point, the person will go back and say, okay, there was something about that question which shifted me.
One more thing, we actively not give anything. Passively we can. Example of a child, for example, if he has already one toy and you ask him, he won't give. And suddenly someone comes with bigger toy. He does not know when he leave that toy and
yeah. So in a way, what you're offering with that positive challenge is the glimpse of that bigger toy and saying that it's available if you want. Right? You're not saying give me the smaller toy. You're just saying bigger one is available if you wish to use it. Yeah. So that's cause and effect. Again, this is something we very often see. I have a miserable job and therefore my life sucks. I have a terrible boss and therefore I don't get a promotion. Hi. Yes?
One more thing, actually, most time we react to the effect only. Most time we don't go to the cause.
Yeah, but if it's a negative effect, normally we have some cause in mind. We may not express it, but it's usually there.
Yeah, sometimes happen the other person or the person is unbiased person. Many times we go to some person, actually he sees things much better than what we are assuming or thinking about ourselves. Or
well, in such cases, we are possibly already a little open to that shift. Then yeah, the process gets much easier. But otherwise, yes, we need to be very subtle in putting across that positive challenge. So the process, if you're having conversations like these where you're using or working with the meta model of the person, for those of you who came in, meta model is primarily an expression of our beliefs, opinions, judgments, which anchor us and which is our map of the world, which is how we think our world is. Right? That's what we're talking about. So we express the meta model in various ways. Sometimes it's through guessing what other people think about us, or guessing what I am, in the sense I'm useless, I'm bad, I'm good, I'm great. Right? It could be through beliefs which are imposed rules, which are expressed through modal operators, which is have to, should, you must wear a sari when you're going to a wedding, you have to respect your elders, those kind of operators. And now we were talking about cause and effect. Cause and effect is where there is some cause which is in the near or the distant past, which you blame for everything else that has happened in your life. It could also be a positive cause and effect, in the sense there is something very positive which you credit for everything that has happened in your life. Either way, you're giving your power away. In the sense, if I'm saying, for example, that my life is so great because I had wonderful parents who supported me in every step of the way, right? Which is great, it gives me a lot of succor, it gives me a lot of support. At the same time, in that process, I am giving my power away to my parents in a positive way, but I'm not claiming credit for my life. You might want to challenge something like that also if you think that belief constantly comes up. So if a person, for every step, every credit or every good thing that he or she has done, is giving away the credit to somebody else, which could be parents or God or a mentor or some fortunate incident, you might again want to challenge that belief and say, what is it that you have done to get this? Right? So yes, your parents have helped you to have a wonderful life. What about your efforts? So somewhere it shifts the person to say, okay, I have also done something. I don't have to always, because if I am well established in that cause and effect, tomorrow for some reason I don't have my parents around to support me, I have no anchor. So even that positive cause and effect is a very dangerous model to live with.
You can't operate alone.
Yeah, because then I'm like, now my life has to be miserable because my parents are not around.
And then you find somebody else.
Yeah, then I'm constantly looking for that godfather or some kind of a support figure.
So
If
I have ability.
yeah, because somewhere all along I've not acknowledged my ability. So in my map it says I don't have anything, I always have these parent figures who will support me. So even that is a dangerous thing to live with. So ultimately what we are operating with in all of these and all of NLP in that sense is to not really give your power away. Claim the power back from wherever you've anchored it, positively or negatively, bring it back to you. So the process in terms of conversations where you are using meta model is where you go through the usual NLP process, which means you start pacing the person. Create unconscious rapport, which means you're matching the breath, you're matching eye contact, voice, body language, and continue a normal conversation along the way, which means the person is not conscious that you've created unconscious rapport. Right? And every time you find a meta model expressing itself either through a mind read or cause and effect or an operator, slip in a positive challenge and leave it at that. You're not invoking response at that moment. If the response comes, great, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's okay. You've planted it. It's like an installation that has happened. Sometimes the installation happens in the background. It's like a background file in a computer. The person is not aware of it, and that's okay. The moment the person goes back into the world and is again forced to correlate it to the map at that moment in time, the map will shift at that point. It may not show it immediately, and that's okay. So that was cause and effect, and the last important one meta model is what is called complex equivalence. Complex equivalence is where it's very similar to cause and effect, but then you're correlating drastically different things. In that sense, what in my mind is very obvious, in reality is not a very obvious thing, right? So for example, I've said, you're not eating my vegetables, I'm sure you hate my cooking, no? Right? So somewhere in my mind I've made a correlation that she's not eating vegetables I've made, which means I'm a terrible cook. For her it may be a totally different thing. Maybe she doesn't like that vegetable, or maybe she's not supposed to have it. It's totally different, but somewhere I have created an equivalence that not eating vegetables means not liking my cooking. So therefore it's a complex equivalence. There is really no logical correlation to it. Right? Oh, because we are these wonderful creatures called human beings and we have a brain. But
something different.
Actually, if somebody doesn't like your cooking, doesn't mean you're a bad cook.
yeah.
But then we still associate things like that.
Yes, because it comes from a deep source of need. Perhaps it's my need for acknowledgement.
And we want
Right?
to cling to
Perhaps it's my
something
need to be
validate
appreciated.
That's coming up.
Yeah. Now, it's not that you're responsible to acknowledge me or to appreciate me, but I will try and anchor it everywhere I find. And whoever gives me that appreciation is my God. So, no matter how good you are to me, if you're not giving what I need,
Then you're not good.
yeah, then you're not good.
Then you're different. That is good thing you told.
Yeah, nowadays, it's a language, but you're not bad.
That's ours.
Well,
One more thing, because of conditioning also maybe, because most of our condition happens when we were child. And that point, our mind can't so much differentiate things or
Yeah.
put in the. So we see models around us and how they respond.
yeah.
So unconsciously we also develop that pattern or habits which continues unless and until something happens to interrupt that or we become aware. Maybe.
So there's a cause and effect that's come up here, right? We are unconsciously conditioned as children, and therefore we behave the way we do. How do we how do we counter it? How do we positively offer a challenge to that?
We can give examples. I mean,
Like?
of two brothers. But they are different, and they have grown up in the same atmosphere.
Okay. So what you're offering there is a metaphor as a positive challenge. You're offering so he says that, all of us are conditioned as children, and at that point we don't have the discretion to decide if it's good or not. So we operate the way we do.
Adults, and then we can take the responsibility of
However, if you offer that, you're countering the person directly, right? When we say positive challenge, what we're trying to say is challenge the model, challenge the belief, don't challenge the person. So now if you tell him that now you're an adult, why aren't you doing anything? The message that's received is, I am irresponsible, I don't like you. Right? So, yeah, instead if you're able to say that, but children of similar parents or twins sometimes behave so differently.
It's generalized.
Yeah, you're just offering an alternative saying, yeah, ऐसा भी हो सकता है. This is also possible.
और एक चीज है कि solution अगर आपके तरफ से आता है ना, chances है कि सामने वाला
नहीं लेता।
Yeah.
accept नहीं करेगा।
Right.
वो उसके तरफ से आएगा ना।
That is why I think
So,
Socrates
Hmm.
is the great this meta model
Yeah.
must be
Yeah,
initiated through him.
Yeah.
Because he always poses questions.
Stories and questions.
Stories and questions. He's not giving solution.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the reason because probably the solution what the other person wants maybe
Correct.
something else. And
Yeah.
what
And he will also
Yeah.
get,
and
"Arey,
maybe
मैंने coach
resentment
किया
if probably.
See, and sometimes I'm not even, because in my mind it's not a problem.
Right.
When you offer a solution for me, it's like, oh, you think something is wrong with me? So somewhere I'm going to get defensive, right? So a positive challenge, the skill for us to glean is, the positive challenge is purely an alternative to say, hey, do you think you can look at the belief in a different way? That's it. You're leaving it at that. You're not saying, okay, do it now. These are the steps to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, we're not doing that.
Then the person thinks.
Yeah, all you're doing is you're talking to the belief. You're not talking to the person in that moment. So if I think that because I'm conditioned as a child, that's how I'm going to be the rest of my life, all you want to do is talk to that belief. It says, sometimes even twins behave so differently, and leave it at that. It's not about saying twins behave so differently, so why can't you think about, don't bring it back to me, just address the belief, leave it at that. So because,
We've learned to, address people
yeah, because that comes from our need for acknowledgement.
and not the beliefs.
Yeah.
So we,
Yeah.
in every sentence of ours is always like blaming the other person,
Yeah.
telling them that you're not right.
Yeah. So as practitioners of NLP, the idea is be aware of your needs. It's not saying that you transcend and you don't have any needs, but in the moment when your intention is to serve and shift the other person's belief, just work with that other person's belief. Don't look for acknowledgement or response at that point. The person may totally shift the subject in the next sentence or look blank or not. Yeah, so that's possible, but that's also a sign that somewhere something registered and therefore the shift happened. The person didn't try and reinforce that point of view. So that's okay. Don't look for acknowledgement in any manner whatsoever. Right? So that's complex equivalence, where you might think it's very absurd, and yes, the natural logical tendency is to say, how do you even link these two things? Why does my eating vegetables have anything to do with your cooking? But all you can do is simply offer that a different or an alternative, simply in terms of saying, I like your cooking, but do I necessarily have to have vegetables? Right? Or if I like your cooking, does it mean having vegetables is necessary? Right? So you don't even have to say that I like your cooking. It could simply be about saying, if I do like, does it mean that I have to have vegetables? Because see, in this moment, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about your belief, right? So that moment is consumed by your belief. So it's not about me saying I like your cooking. It's not about you saying how are you making this correlation, but just address that belief and say, okay, so if I like your cooking, does it mean I need this action?
Does this means how we communicate with ourselves or others?
Yeah. The first communication is with self. Even if you're offering a positive challenge to someone else, the first thing is...
Same thing, how we put can make us at age also or tense also. And other person also, how it sound to them.
Yes. So meta models, as I said, there are other variations also in which models express themselves. Like sometimes you have deletions or what you said, or generalizations. All men are bad. I mean, there's like a whole category deleted, and so all men are bad.
Very often we
So again, there is an opportunity to offer a positive challenge there without saying, no, your belief is wrong. It's about saying that sometimes, for example, you can say that we've had men who've served the world so beautifully. Right? So it's not about saying you're wrong. It's just saying that, yeah, this also exists.
showing other side.
Yeah. So where in my mind, I believe that my map is the world, my belief that all men are bad is reality, what you're bringing in is another world and saying, hey, there is a world where men are good too. And somewhere in my mind, I may not express it in that moment, but say that, oh, okay, if that world is possible, should I create a new map? Maybe some men are good.
Pacific, we can be Pacific. Maybe particular person can behave bad or so.
Again, no justification, don't get into the story. The positive challenge is don't get into the story at all. Because in getting to the story, you are making me reinforce my belief. So if you're saying some particular guy may have been bad, and I will narrate my whole story to you and say, yeah, this guy was so bad to me.
Okay, so it
Yeah, and somewhere I enjoy telling that story. Yeah, because it reinforces my belief, right? It reinforces the fact that I exist in my world. All you want to do is offer an alternative world. Because, see, which is at the beginning I said unconscious rapport exists even unconsciously. So sometimes if you flow, you might flow in a negative direction also.
We always create our story. To validate ourselves.
It's only about the stories
Yeah.
and then reinforcing that story.
Yeah.
It's just like every parent will tell their child, I have been a very good student.
मेरे time पे
That's been a very good stage. Now
Yeah.
it is for the child to see
Yeah.
whether it was really
Yeah.
good or bad. But still it is at that stage. Is I want to be better than you?
That's a complex equivalence, as you said. In my time, this was how we used to study. Now, for the child, it is complex in the sense there is no logic between 1970 and 2014. But
Like we had no Xeroxes.
yeah, so you'll find these statements coming up all the time. The opportunity now is to offer those positive challenges and see if you're able to shift the world for others.
So you should know in which category those.
You don't need to. Wherever you think the belief or the statement or the judgment or the opinion might limit the perception of the world for that person, you might offer a challenge to it. You don't have to be able to name it, it doesn't really matter. But yes, what is important is be mindful that you're not getting sucked into that belief. Because somewhere there is a tendency to get sucked into the story, we enjoy it, because somewhere it is also self-serving, right? Our need for acknowledgement and affirmation is met. Yeah.
Or playing that victim or victim.
Yeah. It's nice to play victim sometimes because it's comfortable. But at the same the question or the premise for using meta models is it life-serving or is it life-alienating? If you hear something which is life-alienating, it's disconnecting the person from the world, you might want to serve in that moment. And that service is purely offering a challenge and leaving it at that, and the person may take it up whenever.
So will the person feel opposed if you present a positive challenge? See, the person is looking for some need, that's why it's talking like that. And then if you offer a general belief on a positive challenge, will it feel rejected? Or will it be taken as this person is opposing me or not agreeing to me, to what I'm saying?
Which is where how you word the challenge becomes important. Remember, you're not addressing the person, you're addressing the belief. So you're not saying, why don't you see that there are also other things happening? We're not saying that. You're simply saying, but there are people as well. And you're not inviting the person to say, would you want to look at... No, not if you worded it correctly. Don't bring in the person at all there. Don't call for action. Right? So you're not saying that, but there are also these other people. Why don't you look at them? You're not saying the why don't you look at them part of it. You're just saying there are others who exist. That's it. Right? So you're still in that conversation with that person. You're still pacing with the person. So you're very much there. But at the same time, you're offering an alternative.
Put up a seed.
Yes.
For a period of time.
Yeah. And sometimes it may take really long like a bamboo, but that's okay. The point is to serve life in that moment.
But in any conversation, is it not correct to accept the views of other people also?
You might, that is also a valid choice. However, if you, for whatever reason, think that it may make the person stagnant or not help the person grow, you might want to offer. You're not doing any harm by accepting the views. You may just have lost an opportunity to serve. That's all.
Like in this in this particular place, but this the example what I given is like if you see on the headline and all people are different, that you try to listen to them, you try to, and then that is where what you said. But when two normal people are talking, then again, don't you think it is I'm trying to impose my view on the other person?
It depends on what the normal means to you. In the sense that, yeah, because if see, the word normal for me is also a judgment, right? If he's like me, he's normal. Otherwise, he's different. And I'm using the word different, but what I mean is I don't want too much to do with him, right? So if that's the space I'm coming from, then perhaps there is an opportunity to shift myself first. Yeah. No, because in judging him as a normal man, somewhere I'm resonating, right? So somewhere there is my belief also which needs to be challenged. Why do I have to call him normal or different or anything? He is an individual and so am I, and if I find an opportunity for him to grow and serve, then yeah. Yeah.
example about the second model. You have to follow the rule